Here with me now is Kevin Jackman. Now, you spent some time with two World War II veterans. What was that experience like?
It was pretty incredible. I had an opportunity to spend a couple afternoons with Bob Piper and Cliff Preston, both of which are Naperville residents, and they had a lot of experiences that they were able to share with me. Obviously, the conversation was a lot about World War II, but the conversation also went towards the history of Naperville and family affairs, so it was a pretty fascinating afternoon.
Wow, it really sounds like it. Tell me what you took away from these conversations about war.
Well, it struck me that the next generation of people isn't going to have direct contact with World War II veterans. So with that in mind, I kind of try to seek what lessons do they know that we can kind of instill in the next generation, and that really was what inspired the story.
All right, let's take a look.
No matter what our enemies in their desperation may attempt to do to us, we will say, as the people of London have said, we can take it. And what's more, we can give it back, and we will give it back with compound interest.
World War II, the deadliest conflict in human history. An estimated 50 to 85 million casualties in the battle between the Allies, the UK, USSR, China, and the US, and the Axis, which was comprised of Germany, Japan, and Italy.
What should you learn? It's a nasty business. It's a nasty business.
For these two incredible men, that nasty business was an experience forged into their minds on the battlefront against Japan. Now 93 and 89, 70 years removed from the war, Bob Piper and Cliff Preston share their war stories from the beginning.
I was 14 years old. I worked in a Kroger store in Mendota on Saturdays. And our manager had taken us to Chicago, to the Chicago Theater, all the employees, for a Christmas gift on December 7th of 41. When we came out, there was a guy hawking papers. Pearl Harbor had been bombed.
You either drafted or you picked a service. So I decided Air Force. So I went to the recruiting section. They gave me a medical, and they said that I had color blindness, so I couldn't be a Air Force guy. I wasn't really colorblind. Maybe to them you didn't discern very subtle changes and everything. The Navy said as long as I could see red and green, that's all right. Because on a ship, you have a red light on the port and a green on this. If you saw red, you knew that was the port side of the ship.
Preston also joined the Navy, choosing the branch figuring he could avoid the motion sickness he experienced in the back of cars.
My CB, they transferred me to the Navy Seabees because in my form that I'd filled out, I'd put down, because I did some construction stuff at home, worked part-time for a guy and so forth.
The history of the Navy, as I remember it taught there, was we are the arm of the United States to carry the flag everywhere.
With training over, it was time to set west while the war continued on two fronts, one in Europe and the other in the Pacific against Japan, where Piper and Preston found themselves. And while Piper never saw the conflict firsthand, Preston had a near-death experience.
All of a sudden we heard a plane dive, and we quick doused the light. He came over us only about 25 foot high, but he didn't fire on us. And we hadn't heard the siren go off for the fogging. We looked out and all the ships were fogged in. So he saw that little light and he dove on us, but for some reason he didn't fire.
I remember I had the duty of fire watch one time. I had to patrol around, be sure there wasn't a fire. And I found a fire. One officer threw his cigarette over and it landed in the dry mop. So I went back and I reported there's a fire. And they, where? I said there's a mop burning out there.
As the war was winding down, we were getting prepared to go for the invasion of Japan. And in fact, they had sent us fresh troops, and we were in the process of doing that. But then they dropped the bombs, which was, for us, was just fantastic, great.
The first was How about that? Surprise, surprise. We didn't know anything about the bomb. We didn't know anything about that. And then, thank God it did before we got there, before we took off, because that would have, the invasion of Japan would have been just a slaughter on both sides, I'm afraid.
With all the wars that we've been in and so forth, makes you wonder, was it all worth it in some instances and so forth and that, but I'm just happy that I was able to survive what I was in.
It's a dumb thing to have to do, isn't it, really? Why should we go out and kill each other? It's crazy. Yeah, that's the message. Don't get involved unless you're willing to do whatever is necessary to win.
Kevin Jackman for 630.